What makes a sewing project mediocre versus exceptional? In this video, we are going to be discussing all about those little habits and tiny changes that you can make in your sewing routine to take your sewing to another level, whether you're a beginner or an advanced sewist. So now we're going to discuss all of these points. If you take them to heart and really get those habits, you're going to see really big improvements in your sewing projects, and the results are going to be so impressive. Now let's go and discuss what those are. There are so many steps to doing that, and we'll discuss each of them, but the most important thing is to be patient. That is the biggest quality a sewist can have. The biggest mistake a sewist can make is to just pull out your fabric and your sewing pattern and get sewing. Why? Because a great sewing project, an exceptional project, starts in your mind and not on your sewing machine. Because these things take time, they take a lot of planning, and the biggest virtue a sewist can have really is simply having patience, simply thinking ahead and preparing with lots of patience and taking the time to do all of these steps that we're going to discuss, because this planning stage takes so many steps and there are so many things to think about. I myself have a checklist before I start any project to make sure that I didn't miss any of those crucial steps before I even touch my fabric. So first of all, choosing the right finishes is a crucial, very important step. Not only does your fabric, first of all, need to match your project, and you can see behind your sewing pattern all those suggestions of which fabrics to use for that particular design, but also your finishes, such as all those different types of seam finishes, Hong Kong binding, overlocking, French seams, felt seams, all of those have different purposes for different fabrics and situations. It might be very tempting, for example, if you're making a delicate blouse, to go ahead and overlock those seams, but if you make those beautiful French seams, if you take the time to do that, it's going to make a huge difference. Even if it's on the inside, you're gonna feel amazing in it. It's gonna add that little luxury touch to your outfit. Also, all those details, such as the finishes you use on your buttonholes, do you make them by hand? Do you use your machine to make them? Your interfacing is really important. You need to choose the correct weight of interfacing, because otherwise it's going to feel like cardboard or not be stiff enough. So it needs to be just right for that particular fabric you're using, and also the right color, because there are different colors of interfacing as well. And all of these details make or break your garments. One of the top most important habits that I've acquired throughout my sewing journey was to press as I go. And this is so important because even for a beginner, it can help you conceal and even prevent so many mistakes and make it that much nicer in the final result. Because even if you finish your garment and then iron it, I can guarantee you, I can tell whether or not you pressed as you went. So every seam you sew, you press that. Every dart, you take your cushion and you press it. This is gonna make a huge difference, and it's actually one of my favorite steps because it lets me see exactly what I did and exactly how it looks. Like when I've sewn a dart, I want to see it pressed and flush and see that there's not that ugly dimple. It's perfect, it's nice, and I want to make sure that I can tell exactly how it sits once it's pressed, and keep seeing, like, it's like getting a glimpse of the finished garment in the end, and it's really a satisfactory step that I would absolutely never ever skip. This brings me to today's sponsor, Potwall. If you're looking for the perfect ironing setup, the ironing board cover of Potwall is the one for you. First off, let me tell you about its rapid ironing feature. The cover is silver coated with enhanced heat reflection, ensuring optimal heat and steam reflection. This means you'll save time and energy every time you press your fabric. The installation process is also a breeze. The fabric cover stretches to fit your ironing boards perfectly in only a few seconds, and thanks to the Velcro closure at the bottom, which is so easy to just stick and go, the cover stays firmly, precisely and wrinkle-free on the board, and you don't have to fuss with slipping covers any longer. What sets this cover apart as well is its superior ironing effect. It boasts 2 layers of comfortable padding inside, sponge and felt, and the sponge layer allows steam to pass through efficiently while the felt retains heat and moisture effectively. This combination guarantees a superior ironing result, ensuring your fabric is perfectly pressed. A good ironing board cover is really crucial in sewing because when the cover is too thin, the ironing board grills can imprint onto your fabric, I kid you not, making it difficult to achieve a smooth finish. And it's additionally a thin cover makes it hard to get a good grip on the item you're trying to iron, and Potwell's thick multi-layered cover ensures that you won't have these issues and you will make ironing so much easier and much more pleasant. And let's not forget the high quality either. The cover is made of 100% cotton, offering excellent breathability and a high level of comfort. It's a top-notch product that is not only beautiful but also durable, promising long-term use. So if you want to take your sewing to the next level, pressing as you go is essential. And with this fantastic ironing board cover, you'll make the process easier, faster, and more effective. Check out the link in the description to get yours today and elevate your sewing game. Thanks to Potwell for sponsoring this video, and now let's go to our next tip. Before you even buy your pattern, you need to measure yourself correctly, and there are so many videos out there on YouTube for you to be able to do that. And you can ask for someone's help if you're having some struggle, and you can even go to your local tailor's shop to get some help with your measurements. And then you should compare your measurements to the measurements in the back of your sewing pattern that you're thinking of using. If it's not the right size, either buy the right size or take your sewing pattern and do the necessary adjustments before you even use it. And sometimes even when you make those adjustments, when you measure yourself and the pattern, you check what's written on the pattern, the ease amount that they add onto the pattern itself can be a little too much or not enough. So it's recommended that if you have these sizing problems, you take your measuring tape and measure the actual pattern to see how much ease was added and adjust as necessary for your own body type, for your own measurements and your preferences. One really crucial step that I see everyone skipping somehow, and that was taught to me from the very first project, was using mock-ups. So we took our fabric, we took our sewing pattern, we did all of our adjustments, but we have to test that because the adjustments we make on paper don't always translate well onto fabric and onto each type of fabric. And there are 99% going to be other issues because you fix something with your fit, something else is gonna appear. So for that reason, in order to not have those problems on our final garment, on our precious fabric, we use a mock-up using some extra fabric or like some cheaper fabric, mock-up fabric, so that we can see them ahead of time. And sometimes we read our instructions and we think we understood them, but during the sewing process, we encounter some problems that make it clear that we didn't understand everything. I think it happened to all of us that we finished a garment with so much effort and so much love into it, and it doesn't fit us in the end, and I don't want that to happen to you. It's really discouraging. So do your homework, make a mock-up. You don't have to do every single thing. A mock-up is just a shell, so you don't have to finish the seams, you don't have to do facings or anything like that. Check the videos on YouTube on how to make a mock-up. It's easier than you think, and it's gonna save you lots of headaches. And if you need to know more about how to make mock-ups and you want me to make a video about that, let me know in the comments down below and I will make a video on my own process while I'm making my own mock-ups. Another important habit that I feel I would be blind without is keeping a sewing journal. My sewing journal is my hands and feet, and it keeps my measurements, it tracks my fabrics, there's individual pages about every single project I did and what I learned from them, and all the little things I would do differently next time, or the problems I encountered. All of my lessons, all of my knowledge, everything is written in that journal, and that is a lifesaver. I would feel seriously blind without it. And I will soon be making a video, a tour sort of my own sewing journal, so stay tuned for that. Every time I get my hands on an interesting, good quality piece or a vintage piece, I like to go on a treasure hunt of sorts. I turn that garment inside out and see what they did in there. I feel like a surgeon when I do that. It's quite fun, and you get to see so many techniques, even forgotten things or ideas from other sewists, perhaps much more experienced than us, and also get some ideas and inspirations for my own projects. It's really helpful for that. Definitely learning from other sewists and checking the garments you already have in your wardrobe is a great way to improve your technique and see those tiny little details that other sewists added to their garments to make it more exceptional. Sometimes when we're planning our sewing projects, we get really excited and we get all of these ideas and we focus more on quantity rather than quality. I also get inspirations. I get inspirations of like 10 garments every season, and I make videos about my ideas and my inspirations, but most of them never turn into reality. And I think that's okay, because sewing is not about consumerism. The other day I saw a video on YouTube about how many things someone sewed in a year. It was 75, and I could not believe that number, because I can barely sew 10 things, and I think that it should be an art. Sewing is an art, and it's one of the most complex skills I've ever learned. It's very time consuming, energy consuming, and really a skill that you need to perfect. There's so much to learn, so much to know about, and there's always something to improve. So if we focus on quantity over quality, our garments will never improve, because we need to take the time to change some habits here and there, catch ourselves making a mistake, notice something and improve it. And there's enough consumerism in the world. We don't need sewing to become one of those. In fact, sewing has taught me just how difficult it is to build a garment, to construct and make it from scratch, and gave me so much respect for the people who make the garments that I even buy. And I cherish every single item that much more. So knowing sewing and then seeing garments as something to consume in excess is, to me, an oxymoron. It's seriously ironic. And please focus on quantity, on the art, on the learning experience of sewing, rather than getting caught up in having all of those items. Because inspiration is of course going to happen, but you can't have it all. You need to take the time and really focus on each project. In fact, that's one of the reasons why I kind of struggle with making so much sewing content, because it's either going to consume my life and I'll try to keep sewing and sewing just to like make content to share with you, or I'm gonna be authentic and true to myself and keep at my own rhythm and share when I can. And that's really a difficult balance for me. When we're sewing and when we're watching videos, reading our sewing pattern instructions, we always come across these terms: stitching in the ditch, stay stitching, under stitching, edge stitching, top stitching, and these can seem really daunting when you don't really know what they mean, and also the differences, the slight differences between each of these. And I know they're intimidating, but take the time to just watch a few videos on YouTube and I promise you will easily understand what these are. And if you're skipping them, don't, because they make a huge difference, and I know they are intimidating, but they really don't take that much effort to learn. It's simply straight stitches. The only difference is their placement, and they are gonna make a huge difference. So take the time today to really go and watch a video on what these are, learn what they are, put them in your head, and then use it in your next project. Another important step is to, before you even cut into your fabric, pre-wash it, so that if it shrinks, it's gonna be already shrunk before you even sew anything. It's not gonna shrink your finished garment. But also iron it so that you can make sure that you cut it straight. It's gonna make it easier to work with the fabric before you even cut the patterns out. And most importantly, it's gonna fix any warping of the grain line is gonna make your grain line so much more accurate. Sometimes I even wash my fabric twice or and iron it twice, because sometimes the grain line is that off, especially if the quality is not what I expected it to be. So grain line is of course one of the most crucial things, if not the most crucial thing of sewing, which we'll talk about soon. But pre-wash and iron your fabrics so that it can be that much more accurate. Now let's talk about that grain line we just mentioned. So that is absolutely crucial, absolutely a deal breaker. If your grain line is off, your entire garment, no matter how well you fitted it, no matter how many adjustments you did, no matter what you did, is going to look off, because it's not going to fall right, it's not going to drape nicely, it's just gonna be off. And I know it's daunting, especially for beginners, to find that grain line, but it's really not as complicated as it seems. If you want, I can make a video explaining how to do it really easily. I had a lot of difficulty understanding exactly what it was and learning. I don't think there are really, at least last time I checked years ago, there weren't really that good videos explaining what it was, and I had quite a bit of a struggle before I could grasp what it was. There are so many ways of doing it, but really wash, iron your fabric, then straighten the edges, stretch it in one way or another if it's still off grain, and then and only then should you cut your garment, your sewing pattern pieces. Another great habit to have is actually basting, and this is something I used to never do. It's not something that people recommend anymore. I think it was much more recommended back in the 50s, 60s, even 40s, but nowadays they tell you can skip basting. It's the thing of the past, but I mean, we are sewing, it's the same process. Why would it be a thing of the past? And I learned this the hard way, because pinning is just never as good as basting. And honestly, I used to think it would take me so much more time to baste, but no, it takes more or less the same amount of time, especially considering that sometimes just because you pin instead of basting, you end up losing time because you have to unpick, and that is the most annoying thing ever. It happened to me a few times that for certain areas of some projects, you just can't get it right. It's just impossible. So you have to baste, otherwise you'll just keep unpicking all day long. So I really baste way more than I used to, and I purchased actually a spool of basting thread specifically for basting, because it just makes it much more easier and makes it easier to also take it apart, because basting thread breaks more easily in the end, it doesn't get stuck. And just make sure to choose a color that is close to your fabric's color, because it does leave a bit of fluff sometimes, so you don't want it to really be too visible. But basting is definitely something that makes your life so much easier, especially in those difficult areas. This next step I learned is something I learned embarrassingly late, and it seems so obvious now, it's ridiculous, but actually reading and understanding each step of your sewing pattern. I'm sure most of you already do this. I didn't used to do this when I first began, and it caused me a lot of trouble. So already when you read your sewing instructions, when you're not desperate, panicking and sweating, you're gonna understand it much better. You have to understand it with a calm head, and if there's something that you think you're gonna be confused about next time you read it, just take some notes on your paper, so that every time you sew that sewing pattern, you're gonna have that little advice from past you that you're gonna thank for. And also, when you read your sewing pattern, before you decide your seam finishes, your buttonholes, whatever it is, you're gonna get an idea sometimes of what are the good choices for this garment. So which seam finish is gonna be the best, depending on even just the order of how you should sew the garment. Sometimes things really change according to that. When you're sewing, your biggest collaborator is your sewing machine, so give that machine some love. Every time before starting a project, I make sure to clean my machine. I change and start with a fresh needle, make sure that the needle is the correct size and everything. I fix the tension, I check if there's anything wrong with my machine, I fill those lower bobbins to not be interrupted as I'm sewing when I'm hyper focused, and it just makes my life so much easier. I have way less problems with my machine this way, and my machine helps me create these lovely creations that I wear for years. And of course I'm gonna treat it really well, and I'm gonna take its maintenance seriously. Otherwise, what sense does it have? It doesn't make any sense. Again, one of these most important steps is to test everything before you start sewing. So from my first project ever, I had problems with this. Every time I cut my fabric, I cut my sewing pattern pieces, I have some scraps, so I take some of these scraps and I take the thread I chose, the needle I chose, whatever it is that I chose for my real project, and I test it. My stitch lengths, my tension, the interfacing, if it's good. The markers, so important. Make sure that whatever you're using to mark, whether it's chalk or like those magic pens, markers, everything is gonna actually come off. So wash it and check that it comes off, and wash it after pressing, because you know, you mark things and then you press while you're sewing, and in the end of your project you're gonna wash it, right? It happened to me. I used those markers that are supposed to come off with water, and I used them and I tested it, but I didn't test it before pressing, after pressing, and they burned into my fabric as I pressed, and in the end, of course, they didn't come off. So it's really important to press whatever you're marking with before you try to wash it off and see if it comes off. Test everything, crucial. It will save you headaches. Thank me later. Last but not least, which one of us hasn't had this issue where you're sewing, you are either so wrapped up in it you don't even realize you're tired, or you're sewing despite knowing that you're tired because, you know, one last seam, I'm gonna leave it after that, and then you unpick everything. You just make the worst mistakes, sometimes unfortunately irreversible mistakes. Never sew when you're tired. I still have difficulty listening to my own advice. Do as I say, not as I do. But I can guarantee you 99.9% of the time when I sew and I'm tired, I end up unpicking so much of what I did, and sometimes it's irreversible, and sometimes I even have to go like way back because of whatever mistake I did. So sometimes it's hard to like come out of that bubble and even to realize you're tired, so you can ask someone to check the time for you. Like, for example, I have ADHD and time blindness, so my boyfriend sometimes will like give me a little nudge, like, you've been at it for a while, have some water, drink something, take a break, and then continue. And that's so crucial. So there you have it. These are all of my tips for taking your sewing from mediocre to exceptional. I'm sure you also have some great tips for all of us, so leave them in the comments down below so we can all learn. Remember to take it easy and have fun while you're sewing and not focus on those quantities. Sewing every single project is a learning opportunity to improve and also improve your logic. Sewing improves your logic. Anyways, thank you so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, give it a like and subscribe to my channel for more videos like this, but also we cover everything fashion, including fashion history, and not only sewing but also ready-made garment and shopping. So see you in the next video. Thank you so much. Bye.